Good afternoon, dear hearts. Thank you, Pat, for a lovely entree. I wanted to give us a chance to continue on a note of inspiration. And for me, this is always, not always, but from the first time I bumped into this event, it has always served as one of the most inspiring examples of human courage and commitment and dedication that I've ever bumped into. And it's about a young woman who was born in 1956. I beg your pardon. She was born in 1940. The 20th of 22nd, 22 children. Put that in your pipe for a moment. Throughout her childhood, she just wanted to be a normal kid, but as a toddler, double pneumonia and scarlet fever kept her bedridden while other kids were outside playing. When she was 4, she contracted polio, which crippled her left leg and forced her to wear a heavy metal brace. Think Forrest Gump. She had one of those rascals on. For 7 years, she and her mom made weekly 100-mile trips for treatment on her leg, and her brothers and sisters took turns massaging it on a daily basis. When she was 11 years old, Wilma finally walked without a brace. Finally. And her hope of being a normal kid was finally in sight. But strange things happened at that point in her life. Rather than just keeping up with the other kids, it turned out that she could outrun them. At 16, she won a bronze medal at the 1956 Olympics. Tuck that in your minds and your hearts for a moment. From 11 to 16, from being incapable of even walking without a brace, she won a bronze medal in the 1956 Olympics. And just to top it off, to let us know it wasn't a fluke, in the 1960 Olympics, she won 3 gold medals. We're talking about Wilma Rudolph. Wilma Rudolph, a tremendous example. I say, well, thank you, Wilma, in this time of the Olympics, for reminding us that the essence of your accomplishment was your willingness to not talk about it, but to do it. And it seems righteous here, after investing a considerable number of Sundays, exploring the many ways that mind can be used unskillfully, that something be said about the importance of translating our newfound knowing into a doing. Wilma Rudolph, someplace in her heart and mind and soul, knew that she was going to run, and run fast. And she did all those things that were necessary. Weekly trips to get it worked on, 100 miles away. Back in those days, that wasn't a piece of cake. If, as the Gospel of James suggests, faith without works is dead. Indeed it is. It would also seem to follow that knowing without doing is just as futile. So let's share an idea or two about the significance of consistently applying what we've learned here over the years. Almost 2,000 years ago, an inspired Galilean prophet shook the foundations of Hebrew theocracy by declaring that all beings are children of a universal Father within, who wants nothing more from us than to learn how to celebrate the grace of existence by loving one another, but loving one another in a radical, unconditional way. 1,500 years later, Jesus' invitation to cultivate the spiritual art of unconditional love is still struggling for a foothold. Nowhere was this more evident than in the violent sectarian conflict going on in the Mideast between the Muslims and the Hindus during the late 1500s. The struggle was so intense that it inspired an awakened spiritual master, Guru Nanak, to found a new religion, Sikhism, in an attempt to build a bridge of understanding between the two warring religions. Once, while visiting Mecca during these times of intense hostility, Guru Nanak was attacked and asked by a devotee, "What religious belief is superior, Hindu or Muslim? What's the best one? What's the one that really gets it done?" And he replied, "If their belief system does not inspire ethical, compassionate behavior in the hearts of their followers, neither of them is of any consequence." Truth is high, but higher still is truthful living. Just take that to bed with you for a moment. All spiritual paths initiated by truly awakened beings contain teachings that are extraordinary in their potential to dramatically transform the behavior of their devotees, but not until the truth becomes a living reality, consistently reflected in their acts and their utterances. And there you have it. The key to all truly relevant and authentic transformation is the willingness to bring a fierce commitment to the discipline of faithfully applying the spiritual principles that set us free to be the loving players we're meant to be in the game of life. And just to be sure that we're clear on what it means to apply something, consider this from the Random House Dictionary. There we find that the first, thus the commonest, definition of apply is to make practical or active use of. And therein lies the key to understanding what inspires some folks to define unity as a practical form of Christianity. Unity is a life philosophy that will dynamically reward anyone who makes active use of its clear and practical strategies for enjoying the fruit of the spiritually informed life. Jesus was crystal clear on this point. He was totally committed to inspiring all his followers to move beyond simply knowing his commandments into the spiritually rarefied space of keeping them in remembrance of him. Key thought, keeping them on a consistent basis. Remember his inspiring revelation that these things I do, and even greater things you shall do. It's all about the power of spiritual action, the power of doing, the power of releasing the energy inherent in the principles of truth when they are acted on in ways that liberate their great potential to become the mighty spiritual force that transforms our lives from bondage to freedom, from the mundane to the mystical. Dr. William Dean of the Chapel at Duke University nailed this notion when he suggested that he couldn't recall any time that Jesus asked his disciples to believe the following 5 things about me. Hardly. What Jesus invited them to do was to experience the grace of responding to his invitation to follow me. Follow me. A doing, an action. His overture to taste the power of making active use of the genius contained in his mystical revelation of a liberating truth, a way of life so unclouded by longing, it passes understanding. Nowhere in our study of the Jesus ethic do we encounter him encouraging us to refine, for example, our capacity to correctly define and properly articulate the conceptual principles of love. No, he simply calls us out and leaves us with his one commandment: love one another as I have loved you. No mystery. It's right there on our faces. Love one another as I have loved you. Let your light shine. Be a love that shows up faithfully to hug and help and nurture each other, all through the slings and arrows that dot the path of every journey through an earth plane incarnation. Furthermore, Scripture contains no evidence suggesting that Jesus demanded perpetual praise and worship as a condition of discipleship. Indeed, rather than standing on the corner and praying loudly to be heard of men, he typically maintained his nothing specialness by praying to the Father in secret and declaring, "It is not I, but the Father within that doeth these works, or these things I do, and even greater things you shall do." An invitation to test the powers of our deep commitment to a philosophy of life that breeds in us the gigantic capacity to be great changers of things. And there it is again, the do word. Not you shall think about it, or you shall discuss it, or you shall take it under advisement. He left no place to hide. If you want to be my disciple, then do it. Do it. Take these things and do them. Bring them into your daily lives. Nor did he ever suggest that following him demanded an unquestioning belief that he had indeed been born of a virgin, turned water into wine, walked on water, raised the dead, or rose from the cross. The only test for discipleship in the Jesus tradition was perfectly clarified with his counsel that they shall know you are my disciples by your love for one another. Discipleship for me means to extend your love to all beings who cross your path. That's how you prove your love and your commitment and dedication to my way of being. Pay close attention. And you'll hear him inviting us to abide in him, to do the things he did, to follow him, to do our best to emulate his life by keeping his commandments. Remember, it's far more crucial that we put our energy into being a disciple, a follower of Jesus, than it is to work at perfecting our identity as a Christian. If you ever catch me focusing on how to make you a good unitic, just hit me on the back of the head with a 3-iron and get me out of here. The dance we're on, beautiful ones, together is not about learning how to be a perfect enunciator of a religious ideology. Christianity, righteously understood, transcends knowledge and beliefs and theological propositions to reach out and embrace the rarefied space of authentic discipleship, a willingness to follow his teachings with impeccable integrity deep into the mystical heart of their origins. Remember, transcending ego doesn't mean getting rid of it. It's simply about plugging it into a neural network more spiritually informed than its current operating system. Did you hear that? You'll know you're getting close when a deep and inner peace begins to haunt you. And you find yourself incapable of manufacturing turmoil with quite the same conviction you once could. I honor your growing capacity to come off your positions and enjoy a good laugh over how boldly we defended the utter crap we clung to so arrogantly. As a last word on whatever topic was under discussion, have you ever been there? Yeah. Got it. Never stops, does it? Never stops. Invitations to grace. Finally, ultimately, the effectiveness of our transformational practices will be determined by the level of intimacy we have cultivated with the source of all life-enhancing energies. Love, peace, joy, compassion, forgiveness, wisdom, not to mention a little pain and suffering thrown in now and then to stir the pot of our awakening. And so the question remains, how truly intimate is our connection to the heart mind of God, the Christ within? Has our quest for truth merely cultivated our intellects, or has a fierce commitment to doing his revelation gone so soul deep that ecstatic silence becomes the only appropriate response? The difference can be dramatic. The difference. Enjoy the quest, beautiful ones. It's the only game in town. The only game in town. When all is said and done, there's typically far more said than done. Yeah. But let me say this. It's not wise to get in the way of someone who's made up their mind that they're going to do this. Stand aside, follow them. And in the meantime, know that you're well loved in this heart. Bless you all.